systematic racism. I'm going to do a quick roll call to see who is with us. Anderson.
Present.
Becerra is here. Contos.
Here.
Harp. Okay, Harp is absent. Hess.
Present.
Jones.
Present.
Merritt.
Present.
Ramos. Ramos is absent. Cheryl.
Present.
Becerra.
Present.
Von Lossberg.
Present.
And West. West is, she's joining later. And do we have the county commissioners with us? Not yet, but I know that all commissioners intend to participate either for the entire meeting or for a portion of it.
You're just sorry if I'm gonna jump in. I see Jesse is in as an attendee. He's not connected as a panelist, just for whatever
Great.
that's worth.
Thanks, Julie. And Alex, if you could let Jesse Ramos in to join.
I'm in. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Before we get going, I would like to provide a little bit of background about the meeting today. First of all, this committee was formed in response to the need to address issues of systemic racism in our community. One of the first steps taken by this committee was to solicit a proposal for how to best look at ways to address this issue, both in the community at large and across city departments. Six Pony Hitch was engaged to do this first step. In order to provide a balanced proposal to the city, Six Pony Hitch recruited individuals from the BIPOC community to form a team. Team members include, and I'm sure butcher some of these names, so apologies ahead of time. Willina Oldperson, she's program coordinator, College of Health Professions and Biomedical Science in Missoula County Public Schools Board of Trustees. Jamar Galbraith, Associate Director of Program Innovation at Empower Montana. Dr. Laurel Warner, Program Coordinator, Campus Director for Walla Walla University, MSW Program Missoula Campus. Alex Kim, Racial Justice Engagement Specialist at Empower Montana, founder, facilitator of BIPOC Outside. Kaumana Ahida, President, University of Montana Pacific Islanders Club, Diverse Youth Student Coordinator, Executive Board, Utopia Montana, and Diversity Advisory Council. Brad Hall, Tribal Outreach Specialist, University of Montana, and Spider McKnight, owner of the communications firm Six Pony Hitch. All team members are either Black, Indigenous, people of color, or LGBTQ. We have a proposal that is currently being revised to incorporate ongoing work on this issue in different departments of local government. We're also developing ways to continue to engage with the community as we, together, move towards sustainable and long-lasting change in Missoula. I'm sure I'm leaving some important details out, so I will pass this on to Brian, who can provide a little bit more context.
Thanks, Marta. Wanted to do a couple things. First of all, at the last meeting we had last week, I mentioned, and I want to mention it again here, that when I initially constituted this ad hoc committee of all the council members, I had characterized the meetings as listening sessions. And as I acknowledged at last week's meeting, but want to do so again, I received some very understandable and well-founded criticism for that terminology. And so in acknowledgement of that, that's why we shifted the committee nomenclature to the Committee on Public Safety and Systemic Racism. I want to also mention that the city has a platform called Engage Missoula, and we are working with the city communications director and some staff to get up a project tile as it were, on that site. And I think that'll be available very shortly to explain and provide the context and background and archive everything from the constitution of this committee and its membership to the work that the committee does going forward. And I appreciate that that's been difficult to keep track of, and so we're working to improve that process. I have been requested by the Learn Missoula team that I solicited the proposal from on behalf of council to read a statement that they prepared. And so I'm going to do that now. And then the plan would be to put this up on that Engage Missoula site as well. So the statement from Learn Missoula is as follows. Missoula City Council, realizing they needed to better engage with the community around public safety and systemic racism in Missoula, reached out to Six Pony Hitch due to their status of being on the city's preferred vendor list for communication and their work on the downtown master plan. When the council approached Six Pony Hitch, the owner of the organization, Spider McKnight, indicated that BIPOC voices and experiences need to be at the center of this work. The city council asked her if she could identify and assemble a team made up of leaders from the BIPOC community with experience in qualitative research and community engagement. She reached out to BIPOC professionals that she had collaborated with on projects before who helped identify individuals to join, develop, and lead the Learn Missoula team. The initial draft proposal was developed on short notice by the Project Learn team and was submitted with the consent of the Learn team by Six Pony Hitch as a formality based on the company's aforementioned preferred vendor status and due to the need for immediacy as the city council meeting on June 24th to announce this project was set before the Project Learn Missoula team was formed. However, Six Pony Hitch is in no way leading or directing the Learn Missoula team. From a financial standpoint, Six Pony Hitch acts as a fiscal sponsor of the project by way of providing budget projections and invoicing to the city of Missoula in regard to Project Learn Missoula. Project Learn Missoula is still in its formative stage and will undergo several reiterations as the scope of its work is fully defined, and the team not only invites but requires critical feedback, particularly from our BIPOC community members. The foundational premise of this qualitative research plan is that systemic oppression, particularly white supremacy and racism, exists in Missoula, and BIPOC's lived experiences must be centered in dismantling them, narrated and described through their own voices and from their perspectives. Narrating, describing, and reflecting those experiences through a research lens has power by connecting these experiences to systemic challenges in quantifiable fashion. More importantly, the epistemic authority of marginalized groups regarding their experiences of inequality, injustice, and oppression becomes valued and privileged. This means that BIPOC community residents, activists, important advocacy voices, and groups will be engaged. Their collective participation is crucial as co-collaborators in this project. An important outcome is to transform systems and spaces with which BIPOC interface, effectively decentering the currency of whiteness. The Learn Missoula team is a research team. Mirta went through some of this, but I'll read the folks again, consisting of Dr. Laurel C. Warner, Program Coordinator, Campus Director for Walla Walla University MSW Program, Missoula Campus. Lena Oldperson, Program Coordinator, College of Health, University of Montana Board of Trustees, Missoula County Public Schools Staff Chair for the Diversity Advisory Council. Moana Ahina, President, University of Montana Pacific Islanders Club, Diversity Student Coordinator, Executive Board, Utopia Montana and Diversity Advisory Council. Alex Kim, Racial Justice Engagement Specialist at Empower Montana, founder, facilitator of BIPOC Outside. Dr. Brad Hall, Tribal Outreach Specialist, University of Montana. Jayton Simpson, Senior Consultant at ATG, local business owner, community activist, and artist. Jamar Galbraith, Master's Education, member of Missoula's IDEA for Racial Justice, member of Missoula Black Collective. Spider McKnight, owner of the Strategic Communications Agency, Six Pony Hinch, member of the Design Justice Network, and pro bono advisor Brenda Solorzano, who's the CEO of Headwaters Foundation. So that's their statement. I mentioned the Engage Missoula platform, where we'll archive and document some of this work. And I want to acknowledge and apologize, as mentioned in the statement. We've attempted to move quickly, and that has created issues and had consequences relative to communication around the meetings. We shifted to this platform. It's been, I guess, easy to look back in hindsight and recognize all of the mistakes that I've made. And I just want to acknowledge that, and we're striving to do a better job as we move forward. So I'm sure there'll be more to say, and I know we want to get to public comment. So I'll give it back over to you, Mirta.
Thank you, Brian. Before we take public comment, I would like to thank everyone who has participated in meetings, protests, demonstrations, and advocacy regarding public safety and systemic racism in Missoula. Your voices have been instrumental in getting us here and propelling us to do everything we can to affect the change that's needed. I also want to acknowledge everyone who has sent City Council emails expressing concerns about the issues and how they think we should address them. It is imperative, in my opinion, to constructive dialogue that we all acknowledge that we all want these issues resolved in order to make Missoula more inclusive. We're all working towards that goal. So I would like to ask that as we continue this dialogue, let's show each other the respect and tolerance that we all want to instill in our community. So with that, I will now take some public comment. And if we can keep the public comment to a couple of minutes, just so that we give everyone an opportunity to speak, I would really appreciate that.
Hi, Mirta, it's Julie.
Go ahead.
Do you want to ask people to just go ahead and queue up in the question and answer box if they just want to put their name, or I see we already have one attendee with their hand up.
Yeah.
It will be difficult for us to see if a lot of hands go up. It'll be difficult for us to see who was first, second, third. So if you could maybe just type your name into the question and answer box if you want to make a comment, so that we can keep a queue and give everyone who wants to a chance to speak. That would be greatly appreciated. But I see the attendee with the name Olkins G has had their hand up for a couple of minutes. So maybe want to start there.
Yes, please. Alex, if you can let that first speaker, that'd be great. Go ahead. You're live.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I just want to say that I on June 5th was attacked by a militia group, and I kind of just wanted to share my experience with that. I felt like when I showed up to the Black Lives Matter protest, that I was profiled when I showed up. I was wearing a mask, and the militia group started to follow me, and I began to, make my way away from the protest because I'm being followed and profiled by this group. Until, I'm cornered in an alleyway and held there against my will. And I had to run to get away. And then after I was tackled to the ground by a few people in that group, then I was handcuffed. they didn't say you were under arrest or anything. It was just, you know, they handcuffed me and took me to the police station for questioning. And just with everything that happened, I'm pretty traumatized by the experience. And I hope people can learn from this and understand, what's going on, and what these things mean. It was scary to me that, the Black Lives Matter protests turned into something completely different, and there's people controlling it with guns and saying that they are protecting the Black Lives Matter protest. And I was there and I was attacked by those people. And, that's all I can say right now. Yeah.
Thank you. And I truly appreciate you recounting your experience with us. And please know that we are all here because we want to make sure that that doesn't happen in our community. Thank you. Next, I see Shelley Hall. And are you with us? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Shaylee. I was also there with Olkins that Friday in regards to what happened. I had my own situation in regards to the individuals with guns. And I know a lot of you may not actually know. Stacey Anderson, I'm gonna look at you because I see that you've rolled your eyes a couple of times during when Olkins spoke. And so I wanna make it very clear. The reason why you guys are here is to listen to people like me and Olkins in regards to issues that we've had within discrimination and the safety within our community. And I'm trying really hard to keep my anger back and my emotions because it's already disgusting to sit here and to see that you guys aren't paying attention. And it's also a little bit concerning that our mayor didn't speak on what happened to Olkins on the 5th. And that all of a sudden we now want to rally together to bring Learn Missoula that's led by an all-white organization with maybe a couple BIPOC community members, and why we think that's okay to go ahead and move forward with it without even actually asking ourselves what you do, Amber, every day in your life to be anti-racist, what you do, Mr. President, to make sure that you're actually addressing your city and the things and the ordinances that you guys pass. You passed an ordinance back in 2018-19 about making sure public assemblies didn't have firearms in certain places. But when we question you, because I know you guys have gotten these emails and these letters about why the courthouse lawn can't be protected in that sense, we get it's county jurisdiction. Well, it's your job. It's your job. You want us to listen and sit and have these conversations, but you're not willing to actually sit down with yourselves and talk about it. But you want people like me and Olkins who are traumatized, who don't go outside anymore. I don't participate, but I run 2 hotels in this town and I have to show up to work every day. Being traumatized and then sitting in meetings with you guys for the last 2 weeks and half of you not even knowing why you're in those meetings. You are here because of someone like me. You are here because of someone like Olkins who didn't have anywhere to go to get help. And you guys have been sitting at these chairs in these meetings for years, and this has never been a concern to you that your community members, there are 444 Black people in the city of Missoula. Did you know that? Did you know that all of those Black people are afraid to go outside every day? Did you know that June 5th was a problem and that your mayor didn't speak on it until we, to myself, paid $500 to protect myself to speak publicly to my community members? And then after that, you would like to get on and make it seem like, oh, we got a hold on this. We went to Six Pony Hitch, an all-white group, to put together a qualitative research. Qualitative research is based off a race frame. Let's break that down, which then also goes us versus them. It doesn't look at systematically what we do. So this proposal that you guys have, this Learn Missoula that you have, it won't work. We go already and we talk to someone, to talk to someone, to talk to someone, to get us a solution, and it doesn't work. This won't work because it's the same thing. 12 weeks is not enough to systematically break down the errors that we have within our community, within our state, within our county, within our city officials. I hope you guys all sit down and you ask yourselves what you do every day to be anti-racist. I hope you really do sit down and realize what you actually are trying to propose and how that really is going to affect people like me. Last Wednesday, you said that maybe the quiet ones weren't going to want to come. I'm the quiet one. I won't come. And I know a lot of other BIPOC members that won't come because you're not formulating a proposal based off of already lived experiences. There are reports on this, there are comments on this, and you bypassed all of it. And that's all I have to say to you. I hope you guys really take into consideration the damage you've already caused and the damage you will continue to cause with such things like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Next, I see Michaela Cox, and I'm gonna let you in, Michaela. Ms. Cox, are you with us?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So first I'd like to say thanks, Shaylee and Olkins for coming on and sharing those stories. I know that's not easy, and it's been weeks of trying to be heard on what happened to y'all that day and what continues to happen within the city of Missoula. Now, I work with the Montana Racial Equity Project, but I live in, and I'm in Bozeman, but I lived in Missoula for about 6 years. As a lover of Missoula and a Black resident of Missoula and an anti-racism educator, I am extremely disappointed in your decision to move forward with Six Pony Hitch for multiple reasons. And first, we'll start that white folks should not be making decisions or leading initiatives to address racial injustices, and they certainly shouldn't be getting paid for it. Secondly, we absolutely do not need another research project to prove that racism is real or put Black folks or POC trauma on the line for y'all to learn about racism. The evidence is as clear as day and has been stated in various ways from BIPOC folks in the Missoula community for decades. That research that we're wanting to do is just stalling a process that needs to just happen already. We don't have to take the time to prove that our experiences are real. And rather than trying to prove the racism that BIPOC folks experience in Missoula, we should be looking into how racism is already persistent throughout your institution. And I'd like to go back to what Shaylee was saying when she was questioning y'all about how you live anti-racist values. I think that's what we really need to be looking at, right? In Missoula, we've done a lot of talking. I spent 6 to 7 years doing a lot of talking about racism in Missoula, about my experiences, and nothing changed. And so it is there. There's writings, there's seminars, there's community forums that happen all the time. Now, I recognize that this is a unique moment that we're in and that folks are feeling activated and they're feeling a need to act, but we need to be intentional about how we're moving forward. Anti-racism is a lived value. And so we expect BIPOC folks expect to see those values apparent throughout your institution and within your lives before you embark on this project. How do you live anti-racist values in your day-to-day life? And if you live those values, then they should certainly show up within your institution and within your work. How are you working to dismantle white supremacy within the local government? We have been trying to tell y'all what is going on. This project will only cause further harm against BIPOC folks who have been expressing their traumatic experiences to folks with power for a long time. Olkins and Shaylee just shared theirs. And what will you do with that information? Because that's why we're here in this moment today, is because they had an incident at the courthouse. And then we had an action the following Sunday to address the way that the city was not handling things. And now we have a group of folks who didn't have a part in that action on Sunday, having a say in how we're going to move forward with addressing racism and safety in this community. Now, I work closely with a lot of the folks who are involved in that project, not Six Pony Hitch, but the BIPOC folks, and I appreciate their time and energy in this. And I think that we need to expand who's having a say in how we're moving forward. I also think the idea that we're moving forward with this research project is—
Michaela, we're losing you.
can you hear me now?
Barely. We can't hear you right now. Michelle, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay, we can hear you just now.
Oh, good, okay. I just
Okay.
have one closing statement from Zuri with the ACLU of Montana, who couldn't be on today, but would like me to share some words. They said, "I can't put into words what it is like to listen to this proposal. I have watched people put themselves at risk, in harm's way, to share their stories, to get change to happen. Their experiences of racism and harm it has caused them. Sometimes I wondered if other folks were listening. And here today, I listened to you share your plan to listen, and makes it very clear that you have not been listening for all this time. What trust is there for folks who have been telling you their stories to share them again for you now?" And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, I see Shannon Driscoll. Shannon, I'm gonna let you in. Hello, Shannon. Can you hear us?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. Is that better?
Thank you. Yep.
So my question was, I am wondering if we have any flagged police in Missoula currently, and if that can be made public record.
I don't have that answer right now. If anyone from council can answer that, this would be a good time, but we certainly are taking notes on all the questions, and we can get back to you.
Thank you.
Mirta, could I ask for some clarification about that question?
Sure.
I don't understand what is meant by a flagged police officer. I'm maybe the caller could clarify.
So a flagged police officer is someone who has been fired previously or flagged in another community for being violent or for having any charges brought against them or lawsuits brought against them.
Thank you, Shannon. Next, I see Sam Duncan. He would like make public comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Sam Duncan. I'm here in support of Michelle, Shaylee, Olkins, and the group of Black, Brown, and Indigenous leaders who put on the rally at KRS Park on Sunday, June 14th. I live in the heart of Missoula neighborhood. The proposal on the table, initiated by Mayor Engen and City Council President Von Lossberg, is to spend 12 weeks asking Black and Brown people about their lived experiences of unsafety, oppression, and violence. There is nothing that a quantitative analysis of Black and Brown suffering can show you that we do not already know. These are facts of existence. And a study is the easy way out. It is the status quo. And what we are looking for is action. A budget is a moral document. Where this city invests its money is a reflection of who matters to you and who does not. And so the correct moral action here is to invest dollars and energy into communities of color and marginalized and oppressed people. The proposed mobile crisis response team, for example, is looking for grant funding for 1 year, rather than being funded by this city for years to come. This is a reflection of you. It is a reflection of your lack of care for people who are over-policed and underserved and in dire need of nonviolent support and care. In the proposed Housing Trust Fund, the city is possibly dedicating, quote, a minimum of $100,000 from the budget a year. The MRA is dedicating $1 million. Meanwhile, our 10-year plan to end homelessness is failing. Meanwhile, wealthy white people move here and buy homes, pushing our median home price above $325,000. and Black and Indigenous people struggle to be able to afford to live and thrive on their own land. This is a reflection of your values. We, connected members of this community, are using our time, our 12 weeks, to do this work, to dig into your budget and identify money that can be moved from the police and other funding areas to be invested in alignment with the values of this community. This is action. To pass a moral budget is action. A study is an opportunity for you to postpone action yet again. If you would like to join our conversations about action to address white supremacy in this town, you are welcome to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person that I see is Aiko.
Yes, hi. Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Oki Nistu Nitaniko Ikutsimiski Maki Beck. Hi, my name's Iku Beck. I'm a lifelong resident of Missoula, and I live in the riverfront area. I'm also Blackfeet and Red River Métis. And I am making a public comment to kind of echo the same things that were previously stated by Olkins, Shaylee, Michaela, and Sam, and also to just point out that I was very disappointed in the lack of transparency that went down with the 6-pony hitch process. It's an exact example of systemic racism for a white man to reach out to a white woman to ask them to find out what the experiences of people of color are, for people of color to prove their experiences in order for anything to move forward. And I think that a lot of the community took note of the fact that that was an internal decision between 2 white decision makers, and that the person that was chosen, Spider McKnight, doesn't actually have deep connections within the BIPOC community locally. And also, just because someone is LGBTQ does not mean that they are anti-racist or that they know the BIPOC community. So that's one. 2, the lack of transparency is a big problem. And if you actually want the engagement of BIPOC people, you need to do a call for proposals. That's what most people do. It's kind of a basic first level thing that you do when you're interested in having something happen, like a racial equity audit, which I've done a call for proposals through my workplace before on those kinds of things. So you'd have to do a call for proposals on that in the very least. But I also think that doing research is the wrong step at this point. I've lived here my entire life. Our experiences, as previously stated, have been shared a ton of times. There's panels all the time at the university. There's events in the community almost every month where we're sharing our experiences and telling people what they need to do to make change. And people have been attending those and listening to us. Whether y'all have or not, that's on you. But there's also an ample amount of information on Google. You can literally just Google it. And that will save you all the money of doing a 12-week-long study that doesn't make any sense. What we do need is action. And as was previously stated, there needs to be a lot of action around houselessness in Missoula. There's a large houseless Indigenous population in Missoula. That's ridiculous. We're Indigenous to this land. We should not be houseless. We should not be homeless on our own lands, right? That's a basic level racial justice issue that you guys should be solving. Also, things like the mobile health crisis, that should be a permanent office that happens year round, where there's an alternative for people who are going through a mental health crisis or for people who are going through a substance use disorder issue where they need to be put someplace for 24 hours or whatever. It shouldn't be a police station. It shouldn't be a jail. That's wrong. Missoula has been criminalizing impoverished people since I've lived here my entire life, and it's really shameful. And I think that you all are a group that are capable of making change on this topic. I think that many of you are interested in making change on this topic, and I highly encourage that you start looking into reinvesting funds into things like healthcare and housing so that we can help with meet the basic needs of Black and Indigenous people and people of color in Missoula, because they're not being met right now. We started as a group, a fund, a mutual aid fund, and have been fundraising and giving out money. And I swear over a dozen Indigenous people have reached out for help with rent because there's no other place in town for them to go. So there needs to be something within the government, if you're here to take care of the people, that is a way that people of color can be housed in this city, in the very least. Yeah, I have 1,000 other things that I could say, but I know I should only keep it to a few minutes. So that's all I'll say for now. I would say do not go forward with the 6-pony hitch plan. I think it's very ill-advised. And I think that there are some immediate actions that could be taken instead, and that funds could be used in more productive ways to make sure and ensure that the basic needs of our community members are met. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see Jacob Elder, and I'm not sure if you want to provide public comment, but I will let you in. Jacob, are you there? Okay. Mr. Simpson, I will let you in.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this time. Yeah, I'll try to keep my feelings in check and my time to a minimum here, but I think I want to reiterate the trust issue. There's just a big trust issue right now. And I think that comes from so many different levels. It's been called out, you know, personally, one of the ways I see trust in this community is when people live that anti-racist mentality every day. And that's a personal accountability thing. And when we think about it from a community accountability thing, it's what is our city doing and what kind of policies are in place for that. I'll share a couple instances. I've been pulled over at gunpoint in Missoula twice since arriving here. I came up in 2001 to attend the University of Montana. Within the first year, I was pulled over at gunpoint by a female officer. And then the second time I was pulled over at gunpoint by about 4 officers, actually 4 cops. No, I think the first car pulled up, guns drawn, then 3 more vehicles pulled up, guns drawn. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm still here and alive to tell the story, so thankful for that. But furthermore, I understand the profiling that does go into that, and still trying to live with that each and every day, specifically within this community, knowing that that could happen and worse things can happen from that. It really hit my heart hearing Olkins and Shaylee's story about what went down at the courthouse, where cops were not able to intervene. That, again, it goes back to this trust issue on how the law enforcement here is keeping people like me safe. It's astonishing that the cops were not involved when armed people were tackling citizens. It's, again, trying to keep it together here. Trust is a big thing that needs to be communicated some way, somehow, and the engagement with reaching out to a pre-approved person that the city council has worked with without much visibility there, or the acknowledgement of work that has been done in the past, and that's through the university, through the city as well. It seems a little shady. I'm gonna call it like it is. It seems a little shady how that engagement came out when people have been putting in work in this community for 20 plus years. You know, there's been work, again, through the university and within the community. People could have been reached out to besides just one contact on this pre-approved list, trying to tackle an issue that's about systemic racism and keeping people like me safe in this community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Courtney has had her hand up. Hi, Courtney, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just here to reaffirm what's been said by Mr. Simpson, Michaela, Shaylee, Olkins, Eco, Sam, everyone's that's spoken ahead of me. We don't need a plan to do research on systemic racism in Missoula. Systemic racism already exists. I am a white person who has only introduced myself to doing anti-racism work in the past couple of years. That means that the research has been there. The stories that our Black, Indigenous, and other people of color neighbors and community members are telling us are real. They've been experiencing this for years and for decades, and we have a responsibility to change and to do something. And if you all as city council members feel uncomfortable hearing these stories, that means you have the power and the responsibility to help create a safer Missoula. And as a trans and non-binary person in this community, like, we don't feel safe either, but like we need to like be doing better for our Black and brown neighbors in this community. And so I'm just here to reaffirm everything that's been saying. The research already exists. You have the chance to put that funding elsewhere and to put it into community resources and into the organizations that have already been doing this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. I don't see, Julie, maybe I'll enlist your help, but I'm not seeing, I see one person, anonymous attendee. Let's see, I also see Dina.
I
Yes.
could go ahead. The anonymous attendee question is that do we know what happened on Friday, June 5th? And yes, we do know that the young man who spoke first today was attacked on the courthouse lawn, and we know about the armed militia people who had themselves stationed at the courthouse. There have been statements addressing that. The situation was completely untenable, in my opinion. But I want people to understand that we are very well aware of what happened. There is only so far that our authority can go. We will continue to try and make sure that people are safe in our community, and this effort is part of that. So sorry to just jump in with that, but I want people to understand that we are aware and doing our very best to pay attention.
Thanks, Julie. I see Dina Mansour would like to provide comment. Hi, Dina. Good morning.
Hi. So I'm just speaking as a city resident. I've lived in Missoula for 20 years. I agree that local government has a responsibility to the BIPOC community to make change. The government also has the responsibility for a foundation as to how they spend those funds. I agree that there have been many stories shared. It's demonstrated that we need to address an unequal system here in our local government, in our community. At the same time, I respect the proposal that's been put forward. Reviewing the proposal, the team members include members of the BIPOC community who are demonstrated in their commitment to make change and take action. I understand that this proposal was written by Dr. Warner. And what I think is important about this is that they're going to engage in tangible, substantive research that's going to provide a framework for moving forward with action. I think it's very clear from this proposal that the intent is to take action. I also think that the turnaround time is very quick. It's only 12 weeks, which I think is, everybody wants to have action now. At the same time, I think that you need to invest a little time to make sure that you can invest your budget and your processes in a way that best supports the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. I see a couple of hands up, and I don't know which one was raised first, so I will just go as I see them. Jacob Elder.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I see some familiar faces on here. I know I've gotten to talk to Stacy Anderson and Heidi West, and I think, and that's about it. And you know, I commend you guys for your hard work and what you guys have done, but it's not enough. And like everyone has expressed, race issue isn't something that is new all because of Mr. Floyd's death. I mean, this has been a problem that we've been facing as people of color for hundreds of years, and it's time that we ought to take this seriously, and it's time that we ought to involve people of color in the conversation. As I look at this panel, I see, and it's not your fault, but all white people, and that does not represent Missoula. And I'm sure you all worked hard to get elected and are qualified. But given that this panel is entirely white, it's very important that we involve people of color in these conversations when we try to talk about or figure out how we can move forward as a community. And I think we ought to have that in the back of our minds. And I mean, at the forefront of this conversation, and make sure everyone's voices are heard. And Mirithat, I wish you would have responded to Shaylee. She had a lot to say, and I feel like she just got dismissed after she, expressed what she's feeling. So I think if you can still maybe respond to what Shaylee had to say, it would be helpful.
Thank you, Jacob. A couple of things. First of all, I'm a white person, and I understand the frustration and the struggle. Second, I think that I am very moved and shaken by what we heard today. And I just don't think that this is the right platform for us to fully express how we can move forward. But I hear what's being said, and I appreciate your comments. I would like to give Jason a chance to speak.
Hello, Jason here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Well, one thing I would like to speak on is just a point that Jayton made, and it's about trust. And I don't know, I just feel like even being in this space, it feels like the trust, I could feel like it's the gap there when it comes to trust. And one of the questions was, does everyone on the call know what happened on June 5th? And the reply was yes. And I know it's a lot of things on a bigger level in terms of bills or things that needs to be passed to make things happen. But I think in order to build that trust is people have to be willing to talk about how they hold themselves accountable on a personal level before you can talk about how you're going to do it on a big scale on what happened on June 5th or what's been happening not only in the United States, but in Missoula, Montana. And I think sometimes that's like one of the big disconnects. It's trying to form a solution, but not having that conversation of how people personally want to come to the table, whether you're Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, or even white. I think especially people who are white and wanting to know, hey, after you hear these things, what are you planning to do to hold yourself accountable? And being honest with yourself on where you're at with that, and being open to continue that journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next, I see Laurel.
Hi, yes, my name is Laurel Hess. I live here in Missoula. I wasn't planning on on saying anything today, but I believe I'm maybe one of the only people who was actually able to see a copy of the proposal. And I know that someone who spoke before me spoke out in support of it. And I would just like to say that from what I'm reading, a lot of the methods essentially sound like a co-opted version of community organizing that BIPOC communities have been doing for a long time, including here in Missoula, and are currently doing now. And it's actually one of the ways that people found out about this meeting. So this proposal says something about identifying an initial seed or source who will then invite similar members of their social networks who might not otherwise respond. So that's community organizing 101. Some of the people who've called have been doing it around this issue their entire lives, but especially in the last 2 months. And so paying white folks to facilitate that and having white people determine a couple POC from our community to be involved, it's unnecessary. And I do know, and I was happy to see that recently y'all decided to make your evening meetings earlier to allow more time for public comment, and then also give folks the entire week to review the meeting and submit comment by email. And so, you know, these meetings are held in the middle of the day during the workday. They're not very accessible, but organizers have been doing a wonderful job to let the BIPOC community know, which is why we have more callers on the phone this week. And I would just be curious to have y'all address how people, BIPOC people who are listening now, who are interested in engaging on the budget, when specific meetings are coming up, and how that they can get involved if that's how they want to move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Laurel. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are looking for as many ways and platforms to engage with the community. Your feedback is important to the work we do and how we move forward. So we'll continue to do that. Next, I see Patrick.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good morning, Patrick.
Good morning, good morning. As a past city council member, I was appalled when I heard the news about George Floyd on the day that it happened. And I immediately sent a message to my city council member asking them to verify to the community that this would not happen in Missoula. I did not hear anything back. I didn't see anything in the newspaper. And subsequently from that time, I saw where Mayor Engen had mentioned something that militia carrying weapons on the Missoula County Courthouse lawn or on the streets of Missoula can't do anything about it because they're protected by the laws of the state of Montana. I looked at the laws of the state of Montana and I asked specifically what this meant in a sense of carrying open weapons, because I can assure you that if they were Black carrying open weapons, the police would immediately stop them in their tracks. If there were a bunch of Native Americans carrying weapons like that, assault type weapons especially, they would be stopped in their tracks and arrested or did something to them. So I know that there are some difference in racial issues. But when I looked at that, I asked the question, this law is supposed to protect those guys who are carrying the weapons to protect themselves, their property. And if asked by the city to come to help support them in some sort of catastrophe, I could understand that. But I asked the question again back to the city, when does we allow these individuals to do this? And I see this as a Native American, as white privilege, where they can do that and get away with it. And we see other things that happen throughout our communication that exists like that. So one of the things I want to do is to find out that this document that I read by six-pony hitch. First of all, I do know that there's a lot of institutional racism. And when they talked about building a strong representative team, they acknowledged Dr. Warner, but they do not acknowledge Dr. Brad Hall by giving him the name. And that's another institutional racism thing I see a lot, that people don't acknowledge natives with their PhD as a doctor. So, but I think this document is going to put this issue that needs to be addressed really fast on the table. So it's going to rest for a while. And the issue that's happening with George Floyd and issues like that across this country need to be addressed rather fast. I think that city council members need to react faster than what they have been doing about this. Mayor Engen needs to be more transparency to the city of Missoula about what's going on. And for God's sake, I'd hate to see these guys out there, the militia, self-appointed, carrying weapons in the street of Missoula. That's not a Missoula value. And I'm not pleased with that. I thank you for your time, and I wish you luck in your effort to clear this up in the city of Missoula.
Thank you. Next, I see Jesse Hayden.
Yeah, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Jesse Haddon. I just wanted to speak in support of Michaela, Shaylee, Jayton, Sam, and in general, a lot of the folks who have been engaged on the ground on these issues. And most specifically, I wanted to speak directly to this question of the budget and the question of the efficacy of this study. I think that historically speaking, studies like this have been used primarily simply to kick the can or the issue down the road. I think that in this specific circumstance, you have before you a group of community organizers who, most of whom are members of the BIPOC community, who have solutions ready to go. When Sam speaks about this budget, it's an active process that they and a number of other people in our organization are working directly to address a lot of the issues that are affecting BIPOC people in the community directly. And I think that the tendency to want to step back and study this and put out study after study is simply an attempt to kick responsibility for the decisions that are made down the road. And I think that all of you as members of the council and members of this group have a responsibility to yourself that goes back to what Michaela was saying, specifically, how are you enacting anti-racism every day for yourself in your own lives? You guys hold a specific position of power that allows you to decide when and how movements are going to move forward. You are gatekeepers of a certain sort. And I think an excellent first step in you examining your own internalized racism might be to consider the ways that you're relying on bureaucracy and sort of procedural roadblocking will foil the goals and energies of the people on the ground trying to do this work. So I really strongly encourage all of you to examine the ways in which your discomfort in this particular moment arises from your lack of desire or struggles with your own internalized racism that might prevent you from taking action in a way that's going to cost you something. It's going to cost you part of your reputation, perhaps. It might cost you some professional capital. And I think that all of you in this moment have an opportunity to do actual self-work while actually moving the movement forward. So I would just encourage all of you to hear us when we say that we are doing the work on the ground and that we're ready to move forward with actionable items now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate the comments.
Mirta, we kind of got two lines forming here. Maybe we could go back to the folks who are lined up in the question and answer box.
Yeah, I see the one anonymous attendee said public comment by text only, and we can answer that. I also see a question about refugees. Let's see, how do we do this? That one's text only. Ray, would you like to state your question publicly? Ray? I'm going to read the question really quickly. It says, I want to know how, as a community that welcomes refugees of color, we're not doing more to protect them once they get here. Why are these refugees' families having to have lessons on how to interact with police rather than extensive training of our police force? I sit on the IRC committee that helps bring refugees to our community. And I believe they have an extensive network of community members that work with the refugee families to help them get the help they need and educate them on how to best thrive in our community. So I think that we have several organizations that work with them. But I see your point, and we shouldn't have to be having them have lessons on how to interact with police. But I think that each experience is unique. Police interactions are unique to each country of origin. I could tell you my own experience from a dictatorship put me in a position to look at police brutality and police interactions with a community in a different way than communities of color here and communities of color everywhere around the world have to deal with it. So it's an educational lesson on many levels for everyone in the community, including our refugee families. Let's see. I'm going to jump again to the raised hands that I see. And there's one from facilities conference room. I'm not sure who is calling from the facility conference room. That might be staff.
Yeah, no, that's actually an attendee. You want to let them in and have them introduce themselves. Alex, can we let in that attendee that's labeled facilities conference room?
Sorry to jump in, but in the chat, Alex is saying that he gets an error when trying to add them and they can't technically attend.
Okay, so maybe we jump to the next, Andy.
We can promote, sorry to interrupt, we can promote
Yeah.
them to, I think if you give me a moment, I believe I can let them in. Facilities conference room is now, should now be in.
Okay.
Hi, this is State Representative Marilyn Marler. Can you see me?
Yes, hi Marilyn. You show us facilities conference room, so we weren't sure.
I'm sorry about that. I had some technological issues and had to jump on my lunch hour to a computer. Thank you for hosting this meeting. Thank you for adding me. Again, my name is Marilyn Marler. If you can't see me on the screen, I am a white person in Missoula. Former member of the Missoula City Council. I wanted to be here and observe all the comment because the state legislature does have a role to play in this. How exactly the interplay between state government, county government, and city government can help alleviate these problems is complicated, but it's important that we all have the communications together. And I do have a few quick comments that I want to make. First of all, for people who have already called in and talked about traumatic incidents, thank you for sharing that with all of us. I'm sorry that that happened, and I'm sorry that you have to repeatedly recount that. I want to thank I have kind of a good news, bad news situation for some of my feedback for city council. I want to say the good news, I thank you for attempting to work really quickly to try to get a work plan together for this issue, because people do want work to happen now. People don't want a bureaucrat roadblock. You know, people want to see things happen. So I appreciate that you tried to expedite things by going with a trusted vendor and getting things going. And I know the vendor, and I know a lot of people who are listed in the LEARN team, and I respect them, but I am not a marginalized person of color in Missoula. So the bad news here of what I've been listening to is that I think due to some possible mistakes with scheduling and public notification of scheduling and the optics of just going with one preferred vendor who is white. Spider McKnight won't mind me saying on a public meeting that she's white. We all know that she is. This has not gone over very well in terms of facilitating trust, even though the entire team are members of the BIPOC community and seem pretty well qualified. So unfortunately, having served on city council, I have had experiences where if there's a perception from the beginning that something's gotten off on the wrong foot, it can unfortunately interfere with the quality of the process. So it's something to keep in touch, and I know it, or keep in mind. And I know at this point, the proposal that we have from Six Pony Hitch and that the city has from Six Pony Hitch and the LEARN team is still in draft form. It doesn't have a budget. It's kind of a work in progress. Some things that I've heard people from the BIPOC community say is that maybe it would be better for trust building to hit pause on this contract while it's still, you know, being roughed out, or while it's being, the budget is developed, et cetera, and invite proposals from other possible vendors. And then that would help alleviate the feeling that it was just a closed door situation, et cetera. I also want to say my understanding is that while Six Pony Hitch is the fiscal sponsor, I don't think that the primary there, Spider McKnight, is getting any money. It's the people from the LEARN team that are getting money. So I had a couple questions, not for answer right now, but is that something that the council would be able to do, would be to entertain other proposals from other vendors? How would that then affect the project timeline? Because as one person said, it's hard, like doing a study can be perceived as intentionally putting up a roadblock, which I don't think is the case in this situation. And I'll say why in a minute. And when will the LEARN team proposal have a budget? And then another way maybe to get around this is just to take it out from under the umbrella of Six Pony Hitch and put Walla Walla University and Professor Lerner as the primary person on the contract. Okay, so there's some feedback on that. I've also heard, I think that there's some issues about what is the purpose of this study. It breaks my heart to hear people say that this is a study to determine whether racism exists in Missoula. It's very clear that racism exists in Missoula. And I think that what all the local governments need, city council, state, county, is specific information. I mean, we're hearing a lot about defund the police and fund other things that are supportive, but what are those things and who controls the budget at each of those things? For example, it'd be nice, like we have a plan to keep people out of jail or to de-incarcerate people during the COVID crisis. People need better access to medical access. There might be police brutality issue conversations to have, as well as housing. Those are all completely different branches of government at different levels of government, and we have to figure out how to address those. It is not easy. I don't think that this is intended to be a bureaucratic roadblock, and all I can say is that I hope that people will be able to develop some trust with this. I'm glad that the LEARN team members, the BIPOC people, will be getting the payment for this work. I also think that anyone who participates as an interviewee should receive some kind of compensation, even if it's in the form of a gift, because people have to reshare these traumatic stories over and over again so that the rest of us can learn. And finally, on a slightly unrelated, but not that unrelated note, regarding the armed militia that our former colleague, Professor Weaselhead, was talking about, there's a line between people having a right to carry in public and people doing intimidating behavior. I'm personally very upset about this, and I've been in touch with the local lawyer about it. So if there are people who are at that demonstration where people were doing intimidating things with their firearms, I would like them to contact me. I'm easy to find. Thank you very much for taking my lengthy comment.
Thank you, Marilyn. Next, I see Andy. Andy Hosel.
Hi there.
Good morning.
Hi there. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Andy Helso, Ward 2. I'm calling to address a number of things that I've heard today. First, I heard Marilyn Marler say that she doesn't think the intent is to stall the process of action. But I think what we heard from many of the members in our BIPOC community is that that's what it feels like after years of sharing experience. So the intent doesn't matter so much as what the impact is. And I think it's important to remember that. I'd also just like to say I really appreciated Sam Duncan when they said that a budget is a moral document. Part of the problem with this proposal is that a 12-week study passes the budget timeline. We're just starting a new fiscal year today, July 1st, and there is a meeting regarding the budget on July 8th, next Wednesday. As I understand it, the final budget proposal is set for July 30th, which is the end of this month. During that budget process, my understanding is that after listening to the chief of police speak to council about a month ago, he has many requests that he's put forward for increased funding for training and other resources for the police. So this is an issue that impacts us right now, not just because obviously we're talking a lot about police brutality, other issues of racial injustice in the community, but you know, when we talk about other ways to move funding to other sources, the research on that is not hard to find. You know, I myself am a prison and police abolitionist. There is lots of research about how to get there. And part of that is about moving funding, but that budget process is starting right now. So we don't have time for a 12-week study about this. What we have time to do is to sort out where that money is, what the proposals are for that money, and then moving it and into other programming. So that is my belief as far as what this time should be spent doing. I think it's really important that we're listening to community members who are saying there is no increase in training. The research shows that training doesn't actually have a significant impact. For police, that's not what works. But what we need is unarmed people who are going out and addressing crises in our communities. So when I was at the courthouse being threatened and targeted by militia myself as a white woman, my experience was watching militia walk up to people who were in crisis, mental health crisis, and addressing them with their weapons. That's not what this community needs, not from militia and not from police. This community needs crisis intervention. It needs housing. It needs food security. It needs healthcare. These are the things we should be putting our money into. And to say that it's not, the research isn't clear about where to put that funding instead of police, it unequivocally is clear. And I would encourage everyone to go and look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Mirta, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to be respectful that some people may not be able to be on the call for the whole 2 hours. And there has been several comments about the budget and the budget cycle and the process. And so we're kind of at the halfway mark. And I know some people may have to go about their lives and do other things. So I would really appreciate it if President von Lossberg would take this opportunity to kind of walk the folks who are on the call through what our budget process is quickly so we can continue with public comment, but just want to make sure if some people have to get off that they have an opportunity to learn kind of what our process is, what the timeline is, and how they can engage.
Great, appreciate that. Thanks.
Right, Chair Galmerta.
Go ahead, Brian, thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I was going to chime in about that. The administration, the timeline is that we have our first budget committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday, July 8th. What we have done in the past is have budget committee of the whole meetings on Wednesdays throughout the month. And we will get to a point of then opening a public hearing after those committee meetings in early August. I don't recall right now the exact date. I know that we get Department of Revenue numbers around the first week of August, but the public hearing timeframe for the budget would be those next 2 or possibly 3 weeks through August. So it's a process that basically begins with the administration's presentation of a budget that council per charter reviews and amends and ultimately adopts something at that time frame in August. So it starts next week, or it starts July 8th. And I believe that first budget committee of the whole meeting is scheduled at 1:50 p.m. And we'll have subsequent meetings with different department emphases through July, and then public hearing in August.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Stacy, for bringing that up. Let's see. I see Mackenzie Cole raising her hand and also letting us know if she has a question. Go ahead, Mackenzie. We can hear you clicking, Mackenzie, but we can't hear your voice.
I think they unmuted my microphone, but I don't know if they unmuted the wrong one because I'm not Mackenzie.
You're on now. Go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not Mackenzie though.
Oh, that's what
I did have a question, but I'm not Mackenzie.
Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself? That's just the name that's coming up on the screen for us. So just go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what you have to say.
Hi, my name is Valeria. I'm a University of Montana student. I'm part of the BIPOC community here. So I just had a couple of concerns actually, and it's really disheartening to see comments that have been made throughout this. So firstly, if you guys don't find enough racism, are you just not going to proceed with anything? Or are you just going to let it go? Because like, it's obvious that it's been years of ignoring racism and covering it up. So what's the difference now? And then Marilyn, you mentioned how BIPOC keep mentioning traumatic experiences, but this study seems like it's going to be yet another time where we have to keep talking about our experiences, and then it's just that. You know what I mean? And then I respect your putting out your opinion about how, you know, if we have a negative feeling towards this, then that's just how it's going to be the whole time. But I feel like you mentioned, you're white, and for us, we've had to experience this our whole entire lives. We've never had a break. You know what I mean? We've seen this happen over and over and over again. You know, like, we're basically professionals as to seeing how, you know, administrations deal with it, you know, the city council deals with it. Like, we've seen this happen over and over again, and we're just tired of it. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, like, this seems like it's just, like, you guys are just doing it to be like, oh, you know, we're doing something about it, instead of actually doing something about it. You know what I mean? Like, why do we need to have yet another study as to what's going on, what kind of racism is happening, what, you know, on the different levels, when it's evident that it has been? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we literally study this in school, not fully, but, you know, we have. And then more concerning, I keep seeing some city council members rolling their eyes and making faces. So I'm curious if that's part of the job, like as representing your constituents, because I feel like you guys signed up for this. So, I mean, if it's a problem, then maybe I'd reconsider. And then lastly, Stacey, thank you for bringing up how we have to talk about the budget because people have to go on with their lives, because why would we want to continue to address systematic racism? It's not like it's affected our country since the start of it, when we colonized, maybe let's remember what lands we're on before we talk about how people have to continue on with their lives. Because although it doesn't affect you, it's affecting several of your constituents. So that's all I have to say. This is incredibly concerning to have our city council members saying stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's it. I'm just angry at this point. Like, I'm tired of seeing, I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, another Black woman, and it's just concerning to think, like, you could be next. You know what I mean? I'm driving down the road. I'm terrified that I'm going to get pulled over. My mom was in a car accident. She wasn't at fault. And I was more concerned of the other man that hit her. And I was concerned about getting her out of there because we're both BIPOC. And I was wondering how the police were going to deal with it. Like, I'm tired of having to live this every single day and not having a break. I'm happy that other people can just go on with their lives and talk about a budget. But for me, this is an everyday thing. And for many of your constituents, it's an everyday thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Valeria.
There's been Michaela Cox had another question, and maybe if Merita, if you want, I can just read that out and we can answer it. The question is, if that's okay.
It's okay. I just want to make sure that we give everyone a chance to comment. So, but go ahead and yeah.
Okay, so the question is, how do our efforts align with Mayor Engen's pushes for racial equality in Missoula? And we are working with the mayor to try and align our efforts. So I think that's just a short answer to that question. We'll keep working.
Thanks, Julie. I see a hand raised from a phone number ending in 1460. Go ahead, caller. We can't hear you. Phone number ending in 1460. You're on, but we can't hear you. Okay. Why don't we move to someone else, but we can get back to you since you're part of the list. Reed, I see your hand up.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, excellent. My name is Reed Puck. I'm a graduate student and an educator at the University of Montana in Missoula. I firstly have comments on the choice to work with an advertising agency to investigate structural racism in Missoula. As a historian of memory, I must say that it is the American tradition to act as though racism is incidental and surprising. It's not. America's structure is structural racism, and I think that it's frustrating to hear that the city council needs to investigate the idea of structural racism when their power as city council members comes from the structural racism of America, as has already been pointed out by my peers. And I also feel like I need to address the fact that, like, yes, there is a team that has been appointed by, quote unquote, by Six Pony that is staffed with Black and Indigenous people of color. The issue is not the team. The issue is that it's an advertising agency. Advertisers are not trained to do this work, as has been pointed out. Advertising is concerned with optics. If you are focusing on optics, then you have already doomed your mission to fail, because racism is not about optics. It is about recognizing the structural inequalities that make up the system. It is about recognizing the literal inalienable rights that all humans have. And in particularly recognizing the fact that Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in this community and in this nation and in this world have been denied repeatedly those fundamental and institutional rights. As a historian of memory, it is the American tradition to make legal legislative moves to kick the can of structural racism down the road. And so this is only going to continue to do that. Folks have already informed you during this call, and I'm sure outside of this call, that there are community organizers that are already doing this work, and it sounds like that they are interested in collaboration. And so it just seems very foolish to have supposedly a plan that was only submitted by one group of people. You know, I recognize the idea that Six Pony has really good intentions, but that does not mean anything, because part of unlearning structural racism is unlearning the fact that as a white person, like, it is not your job to center yourself in this conversation. And that's how Six Pony's involvement feels, I believe. I also wanted to make a note on talking about, I unfortunately am really bad at recalling names, but someone who is involved with our state government spoke a little while ago about how that there have been measures to slow arrest rates and try to keep people out of jails currently because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And yesterday I attended the state legislative's Law and Justice Committee meeting. And while yes, there are plans to bring less people into jails, we also really need to be thinking about decarceration. And decarcerating would also be the work of undoing structural racism, because Black, Brown, and Indigenous people are incarcerated at such higher rates. Unfortunately, the state streaming system was not as effective as the city council's is. Their Zoom streaming did not allow really readily available names of people that were speaking. But I do believe the speaker that I'm going to reference was from Missoula County. They were speaking at length about the purchases of iPads so that workers in our correctional and pre-release centers can be outside of the building, but still in communication with those inside. And that just rings such a clear bell of the fact that there is no recognition of the fact that, like, if we are trying to protect people, then that means we need to decarcerate. If people can recognize the need for the employees to be out of the buildings for their safety, then why are we risking the safety of those that are incarcerated, and especially considering the fact that those incarcerated are predominantly people of color. I would also like to add, when we were talking about the budget, my own cursory research of the Missoula City Council's webpage has noted that there is a budget meeting that specifically is dealing with the police force's budget, as well as some other budgets, on July 21st. I would love to hear that confirmed, but since that wasn't mentioned, I figured I would ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Can anyone confirm that that's when the meeting is taking place? I'm gonna quickly look, I think.
Mirta, I'll check the calendar. I can't confirm that right now, but I'll check the calendar.
Okay. There's a question about the, is this proposal available to the public? And I just want to say yes, if you go to the City of Missoula website and you go to events and to the calendar, that is attached to the agenda for this meeting, and we'll make sure that that is posted in other venues so that people can access it as well. Next, I see Delaya. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name.
Oh, hi, my name is Dahlia Kilsback. I have a couple questions for y'all today. So my first question is, how are you working towards genuine collaboration with BIPOC communities in Missoula? This means not only meaningful consultation, but representation in seats of power and centering BIPOC voices in decision-making processes. And so if you don't leave this meeting today questioning your preconceptions, you did not listen. If you insist on overlooking the voices of those BIPOC who spoke today, their experiences, skill sets, and dedication of their lives to this work, it is paternalistic, dehumanizing, oppressive, and it upholds white supremacy. White people will never lead an anti-racist movement. It is their place to listen, learn, and to give up positions of power and privilege. My second question is, how are you going to make Missoula safer for BIPOC? This does not mean increasing law enforcement and resources for the police, but addressing systemic and overt racism, ongoing legacies of settler colonialism, and allocating resources to community and social services. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone wants to address that question, if not, we will make sure that that is addressed in some sort of statement that I think we should put out at the end as a recap for this meeting. Okay.
Mirta, I would agree that that there is a lot to all of those questions that we all need to spend a lot of time thinking about and responding to with a great deal of thought and mindfulness. And so this forum doesn't necessarily lend ourselves to that. So I hope that you will bear with us as we provide responses to you.
Yeah, I would like to reemphasize that us not answering a question right now doesn't mean that we're not taking it seriously and that we don't want to answer it. I just think some of your questions are very meaningful and deep and thoughtful, and they deserve an equal response. So we'll work on it. So I see Michaela's hand up again. Let me see.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
I'm on a different device, so hopefully I don't go in and out this time. I did just want to make a quick comment in regards to any collaboration that does or does not exist with Mayor Engen's office, because I work with the Montana Racial Equity Project, and he has personally reached out to us to work towards racial equity, inclusion, and justice in the city of Missoula. And that is not aligned with the proposal that was given by Six Pony Hitch, and our methods and our theory of change would also not align with what that movement is. So if we're thinking about this being a collaborative movement going forward, just being very clear that as far as I know, Engen's office is taking a different direction in that regard. And I'd love for us to talk more about what that looks like if Montana Racial Equity Project is to be involved in that in any capacity. Thanks.
Thanks, Michaela. Yeah, we'll take that into account and do some communication with the mayor's office.
Hello.
You're on. Hi.
Hi. I want to thank everyone who spoke before me, from the beginning, Olkin, Shaylee, Michaela, Sam, Eco, everyone else, Brown, Black, Brown, Indigenous. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I'm a white person and acknowledge my privilege in the anti-racist work in Missoula. I have a comment and a question. My comment is concern about the militia's presence at the Black Lives Matter protest. Thank you, President Von Lossberg, for your email reply. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention about Montana statute 45-5221, malicious intimidation or harassment relating to civil or human rights. I just wanted to share this with everyone. It might not be public knowledge. This law includes a person commits the offense of malicious intimidation or harassment when, because of another person's race, creed, religion, color, national origin, or involvement in civil rights or human rights activities, the person purposely or knowingly with the intent to terrify, intimidate, threaten, harass, annoy, or offend causes reasonable apprehension of bodily injury in another. It's a lot to throw out. I'm a white person. I was afraid with the militia's presence at the protests. I've attended protests in Seattle, different experience. And I can only imagine the fear and the trauma of BIPOC protesters in attendance. One member had a "Call Me Killer" shirt on as well. So it was very alarming to witness this. And so in this discussion on public safety and systemic racism, I think the militia's presence needs to be addressed. I've lived in many different cities all around the United States, in Northern Ireland. And, Northern Ireland with the paramilitary presence, the trauma, the collective trauma of paramilitary activity and violence is echoed 20 plus years after the Troubles. So I'm afraid for the repercussions of the militia's presence in Montana for public safety of everyone here. I also wanted to echo Dahlia's comment and question, very thoughtful. And so I understand this is going to take some time to think through. I wanted to ask the council, how can we follow your collaboration, your intentional collaboration with BIPOC communities in Missoula? How can we follow your this collaboration, your decision making? How can this be transparent?
Thanks, Allison. Yes, go ahead.
So I wanted to thank Allison for bringing up the part about the militia. It's come up before, and her reference to Montana Code 45-5221. It's Montana's hate crime law. We've had a lot of public questions and outreach around this, and I've asked our city attorney about it. I've also gotten some feedback from outside attorneys, and just wanted to comment briefly that and I want to preface this by saying, as someone said earlier, the militia intimidation factor at the courthouse is unacceptable, unequivocally. And I understand that and appreciate it, and I'm committed to working to resolve that. What I have learned as I've dug in a little bit on 45-5221 is that one of the issues that hampers enforcement and prosecution under it is the section around intent. And not to turn this into a deep dive on the statute, but I think that's sort of the bad news part of it. Around that existing statute. The good news side of it is I was not aware until outside attorney brought my attention to it that there is some language in the Montana Constitution, specifically Article 2, I believe it's Section 32, around civilian control of the military. And there's I think, widely recognized sense that when the militia acts in the manner or when militia act in the manner that they did at the courthouse, there's a usurpation of police authority, and that's unacceptable. So suffice to say, there's already some engagement on this front, and again, appreciate people bringing up 45-5221. I think it's important to understand some of the limitations with that statute. That is a state statute. And definitely that there's an interest in what we can do locally to provide the safety that people expect and demand, as they should.
Thanks, Brian. I'm trying to go between two lists here, so I will enlist your help, Julie, to make sure that I'm not missing.
I think someone who's been on the Q&A list who hasn't had a chance to speak yet is Josh Decker.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Thanks for taking my comment. It piggybacks well on Brian's last comment. We in Missoula have the opportunity to be policed by many different organizations, not just the city police. The county sheriffs, as well as the state police, are charged with enforcement of various statutes that affect all of us as citizens. What I witnessed at the courthouse demonstration was not a shunting or a usurping of power by the militia. It was a collaboration between local police and the militia members. It was a familiarity. It was a acknowledgement and acceptance and a cooperation with local police. And we live in a state where, dating back to the foundation of our state, the original white vigilantes that we're trying to address with this conversation used the calling card 3777 to identify themselves in Virginia City and Bannock around the original state capitol. Our state police force wears that symbol on their uniforms, on their badges, and on their vehicles. That is the example of the structural link between vigilantism and modern policing. And I don't think we can ignore that. I think that Marilyn Marler should address that on the state level. Certainly, I was glad to hear her comments, but I know that the state police are a state level issue, but the wearing of the number 3777 is an acknowledgement of a tangible link between vigilantism and policing in Montana. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Let's see. I think we should move to Evelyn Wall.
Good evening, Council. It's good to see some of you again. Mirtha, thank you very much for calling on me. Nice
Hi,
to-
Evelyn.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the frustration that I'm hearing from a lot of the BIPOC organizers that I work with. And some of the folks that have expressed their opinions today are people that I work closely with. They're grassroots organizers, advocates. They understand systemic racism better than just about anybody else I know. And I don't, all right? I'm always learning in this process. I'm a white transgender woman. I have my own intersections that I follow, and I try and learn when I'm trying to work with others. But I wanted to speak about something that I saw the city doing here, and I'm just humbly going to kind of present an idea that perhaps what's happening is we have an issue where we want to, the Six Pony Hitch's interest is to do basically a stakeholder analysis. Am I correct in understanding that? We're basically finding out kind of what our stakeholder needs are. And Spider McKnight will be guiding that process. Is that correct?
I will, Brian, I'll let you answer that, but I think it's more complex than that.
Hi, Evelyn. I don't think it's Spider guiding that. I think the research component of it is primarily the work of Dr. Warner. But there is a strong engagement aspect to it. So
okay. So the issue I think I'm seeing is that it feels like to some folks, we have some groups in town already. The Montana Racial Equity Project is a great example of this. That focus heavily on understanding these issues and working on these issues, and John is working with them, and I apologize as I'm stepping in late here. But the frustration I've been hearing sort of seems like some of the folks are being introduced to this after we've already kind of crafted a solution. And I know you and I have talked about this process before. We mentioned setting up a task force to better understand these things with the explicit understanding that it would be BIPOC-led and paid BIPOC positions, which it sounds like you've delivered on that part. Am I correct?
we compensated the group for the proposal work.
Okay, so the part that I see as maybe a breakdown is one, there wasn't a whole lot of communication. I mean, this is sort of the communication now, right? We're having like this second level of like the 5-level promise to stakeholder involvement. For those not familiar, there's like communication, making a statement or a press release or a tweet. And then there's kind of some dialogue, which is sort of what we're engaged in now, advisement, which is like what we're kind of, when we're going to the Montana Racial Equity Project and asking our experts. And then we have like collaboration, putting people on that board, which I see there. And I think some of the concerns is sort of like who's guiding and leading this process and who's curating the folks that are involved in it. And that's that core leadership part. And I think that's sort of what we're seeing the push against. And I would love if someone could kind of focus on whether or not this is correct or not. But my concern is that I have community leaders that I know, trust, and love coming, saying, in dialogue, saying like, we don't feel like there's leadership here, and either assuaging that or making sure that the folks that are really calling the shots in this project as it's moving forward are Black and Brown community members, and that those folks are the ones guiding this process and informing the process, and also letting us know when and where we should be expending effort and dollars. And so I'm sorry if that's a little vague, but it's definitely the frustration that I'm hearing sort of seems to be revolving around the level of stakeholder involvement we have. And you guys have done a good job of involving them in a large way, but I think either assuaging that with clearer communication about how this was all built, or maybe going back to the drawing board a little bit with what groups were what groups were having head this up, and clarifying how Spider McKnight and Six Pony Hitch came to be the organization of choice. And maybe that was done earlier in the call. I apologize. I jumped in a little late.
Thanks, Evelyn. Anything to add, Brian or Julie?
Just that I take that to heart, and we have work to do to, the parts that have really resonated are about the trust and the legitimacy of the work. And I think I've been as transparent as I can be about what initiated this. And I want to be clear that that team has a draft proposal. I think it's worth, Evelyn, you might have missed the statement at the beginning, and we'll get that posted, and where things can go in the future to get this reconciled.
Thanks. So we have about 10 minutes. I just want to make sure that we give as much time to public comment as we can. I see Jacob Elder. Your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks again, Merithat. So again, I recommend our council members that work tirelessly to represent their constituents. But I also think it's very disheartening that one of the council members has chosen to turn off his video for almost the entirety of this meeting. I think that's very disingenuous to the community at large. So why is Jesse Ramos not on this meeting with his video turned on?
Mr. Ramos?
My phone is dying. Oh yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear
Hello?
you now, yes.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
So, Jesse, we can't hear you, but perhaps that's why your video is off, because sometimes it's hard to have both working properly.
Can you guys hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes? And now,
Oh, perfect. Yeah, so my battery, I'm just listening to the audio right now.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the caller that the number ends in 1460 back on, and maybe we could try again to get that person in. We were not able to hear them before.
Yep. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, this is Danny Tenenbaum. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to thank everyone for speaking out so far. I've heard a lot of amazing comments. My question, I'm a public defender in Missoula. I'm also on the Lower Rattlesnake neighborhood team. My question for council is anyone planning on advocating for a reduced police budget from the general fund and reallocating those resources to community investment for the fiscal year 21 budget coming up?
I feel like I would like to see what the budget is and what the numbers are and see where there's potential for reallocations and putting monies somewhere where we hear the community, where we can be the most effective with that money. So without having looked at the budget yet, I couldn't tell you, but any other council members?
I guess I just jump in to say that I'm sure that we all have our own opinions and thoughts about the budget as a whole and individual parts of it. And we've only got a few minutes left in this meeting. So Danny, while I really appreciate that question, and I think that we should all respond to it. Again, maybe this is not exactly the right place and time for us to take up space talking about that right now.
How should we get that information?
I think that as we move through the budget process, you will be allowed to participate to see how deliberations and when the different parts of the budget are presented to council, make comments on it. Always provide comment to to city council. So I think there'll be opportunities to be engaged.
Mirta?
Yep.
Is there a way, because one of the comments that there are many threads in this conversation that I'm tracking, but one of the things that is coming up is people wanting to really watch the budget process and be engaged in that. And I'm wondering, this is my first time going through the budget process, and I'm wondering if there is a way that people can sign up and get notifications when meetings are coming up for maybe committee of the whole through July and August. I think there's some concern of like making sure people are tracking it. Can someone speak to that? And I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, not having gone through it.
Brian?
So Mayor, the short answer is yes. You can get notified about those meetings. And they'll be on the calendar, but the short answer is yes.
And if you Google Missoula City Council agenda, the page that takes you to, there is a link to sign up to get email notifications about our meetings. And you can choose like which, like you don't have to get, every notification about the planning board or like all city related meetings, but you can sign up for specific meetings that you're interested in following. And I would encourage people to do that.
And it will be budget committee of the whole. And so, and committee of the whole. So, I think there's been some questions about that, and I think there's some interest in that, and we need to make sure that people know how to do that. So thank you.
Yeah, we this is the first year that we will be doing this virtually, and I'm sure that because of that, we'll try to make as many avenues for public participation and public comment available. Let's see, I see several hands up, but they're all from Mackenzie Cole.
Wait, it's me. Hi, my name is not Mackenzie Cole. I don't know why it thinks that I'm Mackenzie Cole, but
I don't know.
Mackenzie Cole's great. My name is Chloe Behan, and I'm an Indigenous community member, and I'm a student at the university. And before this meeting is over, I just wanted to say that I'm looking at a lot of your faces, and a lot of you seem confused or troubled. And I know that at least some of you want to do the right thing. And what I want to say is this: instead of letting your fragility and fears of decarceration and defunding stop you from truly listening to and following the leadership of BIPOC people, you can allow this to be a humbling moment. Accept that you, as white people, will never truly understand racism. Take a seat and use your position, your power, and your whiteness to support an investigation of the Missoula budget and the reallocation of funds to the BIPOC community. If you take anything away from this meeting, I hope it's that there are many, many people in the city of Missoula who can see right through your surface level remedies. If you care about BIPOC people in Missoula, you will follow these very capable leaders who have spoken today. Addressing racism is more than rebranding the city of Missoula or rebranding this proposal. So like, don't try it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're quickly running out of time. Julie, am I missing anyone on the question and answer screen that we need to address?
No, the couple of folks who have not spoken yet, we have Blaine Doherty.
Okay. So why don't we take Blaine's question or comment? Hello, Blaine.
Blaine, I think that your microphone is muted.
I'm just listening in. I don't have a comment. Thank you, though.
Okay.
Okay. I see a Larry Abramson. Your hand's up.
Hi there. Thanks for calling on me. I just want to echo the feelings of the many people who have spoken who urge you, and I think you already are, to reconsider the idea of putting together some sort of report that demonstrates what we all know, that there is racism in this community. I've been part of those kinds of committees with University of Montana many times, and they seldom have any impact. They usually end up on a shelf. And so I would urge you to reconsider that. I think that you've heard many comments here that illustrate that Missoula has a moment here around these demonstrations and the incident on June 5th that we should be focusing on. This is our incident of intimidation and discrimination and perhaps police complicity in a repression of this young man's right to attend this demonstration and that of other people. I haven't heard a decent accounting of what actually went on, and this is almost a month ago. The newspapers haven't done a complete job. Other local media have not, and I feel like it's incumbent upon the city council to do more than just say the city attorney is looking into this. We've seen in other cities that public pressure is sometimes needed to hold an accounting for what the police did in this particular incident and in the many incidents where people felt like they were discriminated against. So there's need for public pressure, and I think there's also a need, while I respect the efforts to determine whether or not there's anything that we can do legally about people appearing with guns at these demonstrations, members of city government can speak out and marginalize the idea that this is acceptable behavior. I've heard some of you do that. I'm grateful to hear that. And I hope you'll continue to do that as loudly as possible and not just simply leave it up to the legal process to determine whether or not the next time we have a demonstration, people will feel like they can't attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. So we have about 2 minutes left, and there are any questions or—
The last person that we have on the list that hasn't spoken yet is Jamar. I wonder if we could just go ahead and take our last couple of minutes to hear from him.
Jamar?
Hi, thank you for this time. I in full transparency, I am on the Project Learn team, and I'm just joining this conversation to do my part in being able to help elevate our experiences. And so I just want to say to all my folks out there in the Black, Brown, Indigenous communities, and other communities of color here, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all, and I'm here with y'all. And my question is, this question is directed specifically to the white folks in these conversations, particularly the ones that are talking around experiences of BIPOC individuals who also aren't recognizing the experiences of BIPOC folks that are on the team as well. And so I appreciate your attempts at allyship, and I appreciate what you all are trying to do. But I think that another part of that narrative is also allowing folks to have that space to speak for themselves.
Thank you, Jamar. And we are out of time, but again, I want to thank everyone for participating in this meeting. Everyone who has been out there demonstrating, protesting, and advocating so that we address this issue of systemic racism in Missoula. As I said before, your voices have been instrumental in getting us here, and I do hope that will propel us to do what we can. And again, I think it's important to acknowledge that we are all working together to find a solution to this problem. With that, I don't see any council members. One final.
Really quickly, there was a comment about links on the website not working, and Marty said that she wanted to respond to that. Can we get that out there? I think if there's something that's not working for people to be able to communicate with us, we need to get that fixed.
Yep, Marty?
I don't know where the person connected from on the website to find the links that are broken, so it would be useful for me to know which links they hit that are broken. I did test the links on our main agenda page as I saw that comment, and I was able to get to the signups, but that's cross-linked in a lot of locations across our website. So I'd really like to know where they're broken, and if I don't hear from them, I'll just check it on my own. It's fine. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And with that, I thank everyone for your time today, and stay tuned. We'll let you know what next steps when that's going to happen. Thank you, everyone, and we'll be adjourned.
Thanks.